Imagine this, a single parking ticket that doesn't just test your wallet, it tests the room. Morning light slips through stained glass and lays pale ladders across the benches. Marble clicks under careful shoes, a paper cup of coffee breathes steam by the door. The clerk calls the next case, and the soft hum of conversation thins. Judge Caprio looks up, steady, cordial, the calm center of a busy tide. A woman steps to the microphone in a dark, expensive coat. Diamonds catch the light when she lifts her chin. Her posture says she's used to being heard before she speaks. Name, the clerk asks. Deborah Hale, she answers. The consonants are polished. Caprio scans the citation. Mrs. Hale, you're here for parking in a space reserved for on-duty officers. His tone is mild. Why there? A small smile, almost friendly, almost not. My husband is an officer. It's his space. That makes it mine. A ripple moves through the gallery, half amusement, half disbelief. Caprio doesn't flinch. So you believe you have immunity? I believe, she says, measured and cool, that there are things best left alone. This isn't about a stall near a door. It's about respect for the police. The hum dies altogether. Eyes swing from her to the bench. I was under the impression, Caprio replies, voice even, we were discussing the law. She folds her arms. My husband knows everyone at the department, she adds, almost lazily. You wouldn't want this to become a problem. That lands hard, like a dropped wrench on tile. Someone in the back sucks in a breath. The bailiff shifts, then stills. Caprio leans forward, elbows on the desk, and lowers his voice. Mrs. Hale, in this courtroom, problems come from one place, contempt for the rules that protect all of us. She doesn't step back, but the smile thins. With respect, Judge, my family has given 2 decades to those rules. I won't be lectured over a painted sign. Then help me understand, Caprio says. No edge, just the soft weight of authority. Why ignore it? Because I was late. Because the lot was full. Because my husband was on shift and I was delivering his spare gear. A shrug. Because it was empty. The judge nods once. Empty doesn't mean free. A beat passes. You can hear the faint buzz of the lights, the slow creak of a bench as someone settles in. She tilts her head, diamonds winking. With everything officers face, we're here, arguing over a parking space. Caprio's reply is quiet enough that the room leans to catch it. Sometimes the smallest lines show us exactly who thinks they're standing above them. For the first time, something flickers behind Deborah's poise, annoyance, or the first sting of being truly seen. She clears her throat, rescues the smile. Judge, my husband risks his life nightly. I'm asking for a little grace. And I'm offering fairness, Caprio says, hands folded. It's the only kind of grace a court can give. No gavel. No lecture. Just that still, unblinking patience that outlasts bluff and bluster. The gallery understands it instinctively, this won't be a skirmish over a ticket. It will be a measure, of attitude, of influence, of whether a name at a precinct door trumps the law on a signpost. Deborah's jaw sets, she raises her chin another fraction. Caprio turns the page in the file, the paper whispering like a cue in a theater. Let's begin, he says. With the facts. Caprio doesn't press the charge, he presses the pause. Mrs. Hale, he says, softer now, tell me why you came alone. She exhales through her nose, a small flare of impatience. My husband's on duty. Nights, mostly. A beat. He was surprised you'd call this in. Said you should know better than to drag an officer's family into court. A murmur stirs. Caprio lets it pass. In here, he replies, even I don't stand above the sign. His tone stays friendly, the message doesn't. The smile leaves her eyes. 20 years, she says. I have watched him leave at dusk and come back at dawn, stinking of smoke and gasoline. I have patched uniforms. I have pulled glass from his knuckles. And when a painted symbol tells me to wait in the rain while he's inside grabbing spare gear, yes, I step into the space. The gallery quiets, the irritation in her voice edged with wear. Caprio nods, not agreeing, only signaling he heard it. What changed, he asks, that made a ticket feel like an insult? Silence stretches. Then, the crack she didn't want to show. Last fall, she says, eyes steady on the bench, internal affairs. A complaint. Excessive force. No body cam footage that showed anything but a blur. He was pulled off the street for 6 weeks. News trucks outside the house. Strangers pointing in the grocery store. They cleared him. No apology followed. She swallows, the diamond at her ear trembling. Since then, every rule feels like a finger in his chest. In my chest. Caprio's voice lowers. And this space was a line, she finishes. I crossed it so something, anything, would stop telling us we don't belong. He studies her for a long moment. No agenda sits in his face, only that practiced stillness that gives people room to finish what they started saying. You aren't the first person to confuse defiance with dignity, he says gently. One protects you. The other dares the world to hit back. Her jaw tightens. You think I'm arrogant. I think you're tired, Caprio answers. And when tired people get proud, it looks like contempt. She looks down, then up again, the fight tempered by something older than pride. He's not the same, she admits. He doesn't talk about the call. He sits in the dark kitchen at 4 a.m. with the radio off. He wrote me a note the other day. It said, follow the rules, Deb. And then I got this. She taps the citation. So I didn't. Behind her, someone shifts, the wooden bench giving a soft complaint. Caprio's gaze drops to the file. You could have asked for a supervisor, he says. You could have left a message on my clerk's desk. You chose the line. She meets his eyes, unblinking. Because lines are all that ever push back. Caprio lets that sit, then tilts his head. I'll ask you one more thing. When you stood there, key in the ignition, did you picture every other spouse who walks by that sign? The rookie's wife with a toddler in the back seat? The sergeant's mother with a cane? Did you picture them deciding the rule was theirs to bend, too? Her answer takes a moment. When it comes, it's quieter. No. I pictured my husband's badge. And not the city under it, he says, not unkindly. Something in her posture softens, not surrender, but recognition. I didn't come here for a sermon, she says. You won't get one, Caprio replies. You'll get a record. But I won't write it until I understand everything it leaves out. He closes the file with a careful thumb. Tell me about last fall. Not the cameras. Him. She looks past the bench, seeing a kitchen no one else can see. He stopped laughing, she says. That's the whole report. She draws a breath. And I started speaking for both of us. Caprio nods once, like a man who has finally located the hinge of a door. The room is so quiet the clock's second hand sounds like rain. All right, he says. Now we can talk about a ticket. Caprio opens the file again, his thumb tracing the printed date. This citation, he says slowly, was logged at 7:42 a.m. by Officer P. Hale. He looks up. That's your husband's signature, isn't it? The color drains from her face. Yes, she whispers. But he didn't write it. He wouldn't. The gallery stirs, soft coughs, a shifting bench. Caprio doesn't raise his voice. It's his badge number, his log, his handwriting. He turns the page toward her. Would you like to explain that to me? Her breath catches. No, she says finally. Because I can't. Then maybe I should show you the patrol video, Caprio offers. Her head snaps up. No. Why not? Because I already know what's on it. She stares at the floor. I know what he said. Caprio's tone stays even. Say it aloud. The pause stretches so long that even the air seems to wait. Then, in a voice stripped bare. He said, the law isn't selective. Not even for my wife. A tremor moves through the courtroom like wind through dry grass. She looks as if she's been struck, by the memory, or by her own voice. Caprio doesn't fill the silence. He lets it stand. When he finally speaks, it's barely above a whisper. So he wrote you up, not to humiliate you, but to remind himself that he still believes in what he swore to protect. Deborah's eyes flicker with something between anger and grief. He used to believe in us. Now it's just him and that badge. He's trying to hold on to the last thing no one can take from him, Caprio says. His integrity. She laughs once, brittle and short. Integrity doesn't warm the house at night. No, Caprio replies. But it keeps a man from freezing inside it. She looks away, blinking fast. The hard shell she carried in here, status, defiance, pride, starts to fracture, one quiet crack at a time. You think he did this to teach me something? I think, Caprio says, he did it because the only way he could teach himself was to live by the rule, even when it hurt. Her voice drops to a whisper. He didn't even tell me. He just left the ticket on the windshield. Caprio folds his hands. Sometimes love doesn't arrive as comfort. Sometimes it comes as a line we're not supposed to cross. Her shoulders tremble. You make it sound noble. But it's cruel. It's both, he admits. The noble parts of life usually are. The room stays hushed, no coughs, no movement, just the steady breathing of 50 strangers who've forgotten they're in traffic court. Deborah's ring catches the light as she presses her hand against her cheek. I came here to defend him, she says softly. Now I feel like I'm the one on trial. Caprio gives a faint smile. You are. Not for the parking, but for what you believe justice looks like. She lowers her hand. You don't know what it's like to live with someone who comes home with blood on their boots. Maybe I do, he says quietly. Maybe not his boots, but I know the weight. She looks at him, startled, but he doesn't elaborate. The silence between them becomes almost human, not judicial. Finally she says, if he wanted to prove a point, he did. Everyone in this town will know he wrote up his own wife. They'll know he remembered his oath, Caprio answers. And they'll know you were strong enough to stand here and face it. Her lips tremble. Strong isn't what I feel. He nods. Then that's how I know you are. The bench creaks as he leans back. Tell me, he says after a long moment, what did you do when you saw the ticket? I tore it up, she admits. Right there in the lot. And then? I taped it back together, she says, half a sob, half a laugh. Because I couldn't throw away his handwriting. For the first time, the judge's voice softens fully. Mrs. Hale, he says, this isn't a story about rebellion. It's about love dressed as defiance. She looks at him, really looks, and something gives way behind her eyes. Not defeat. Release. The kind that comes only when truth lands too heavily to keep fighting. Caprio closes the file and rests his palm on its cover. Let's take 5 minutes, he says quietly. Some lessons deserve to breathe before the verdict. The gavel doesn't fall. The sound that ends the scene is the faint, uneven breath of a woman realizing the man she's been defending never needed her defense, only her understanding. Caprio studies her a long moment, then lays the file flat. Mrs. Hale, he says, voice calm as still water, you knew your husband wrote that ticket. But you didn't come here to deny it, you came to prove him wrong. Her eyes drop. The defiance that once gleamed there now dulls to exhaustion. He hasn't spoken to me since that day, she admits. We live in the same house, but it feels like two strangers renting silence. When I saw that paper on the windshield, it was like he'd finally chosen the law over me. Caprio's voice lowers. Or maybe, he says, he chose both. Sometimes, to protect someone, you have to tell them the truth, even when it hurts. The courtroom holds its breath. The clerk's pen clicks once, the only sound. And then, footsteps. Slow, steady, measured. Every head turns as Officer Patrick Hale appears in the doorway. Uniform pressed, hat in his hands. He wasn't summoned. He simply came. Caprio glances toward him, then back to Deborah. Would you like me to hear him? Her lips barely move. No, but I suppose I have to. Patrick steps forward, stopping just inside the railing. Your Honor, he begins, voice quiet but firm, I didn't come to testify. I came to stand by whatever decision you make. But I do want to say one thing. He takes a breath, eyes fixed not on the judge, but on his wife. I wrote that citation because I realized I can't be the man who makes exceptions. Not even for the person I love most. Deborah shakes her head, tears threatening. Patrick. Caprio lifts a hand. Let him finish. Patrick's jaw works, the muscle in his cheek twitching once. Every day, I ask people to respect the rules that keep this city from falling apart. If I bend them for my own, I teach every rookie under me that integrity is negotiable. I can't live like that anymore. The room is silent, so silent it hums. Deborah's voice breaks the stillness, raw and trembling. You think that makes you noble? You humiliated me. He looks at her, eyes soft, voice unshaken. I never meant to shame you. I wanted you to see me standing for something when everything else felt gone. Caprio's gaze moves between them, him in uniform, her unraveling. Then, in that low tone that always cuts deeper than thunder, he says, today isn't about his judgment, Mrs. Hale. It's about yours. She swallows hard, hands clasping the strap of her purse as if to steady herself. I came here to defend him, she whispers. But now I don't even know what side I'm on. Caprio answers gently, the right side doesn't need a defender. It just needs a witness. Her breath trembles out of her. Patrick takes one more step forward, slow, deliberate. For a heartbeat, the two of them are framed in the same line of sunlight falling across the floor, a soldier of the street and a woman who's finally out of excuses. The judge closes the folder, the sound loud in the hush. We'll take a short recess, he says softly. Some truths don't need a verdict, they need a moment. No one moves. Not until Deborah finally exhales, the sound half sob, half surrender. The officer's hat creaks in his hands as he grips it tighter. The quiet between them fills the courtroom like a verdict the law could never write. The recess ends. The air feels different, heavier, cleaner somehow. When everyone settles again, Judge Caprio leans forward, folding his hands. Mr. and Mrs. Hale, he begins, what we have here isn't a case about a parking space. It's a story about how love and law can turn into enemies when pride stands between them. Deborah's face softens, her voice, when it comes, is barely a whisper. You think I don't know that? I just wanted him to choose me, Your Honor. For once. Not the badge. Not the rules. Me. Patrick doesn't flinch. His words are calm, deliberate, stripped of defensiveness. I chose you every day I left the house wearing that badge, he says. Because if I stopped being who I'm supposed to be, how could I ever be the man you fell in love with? The room is still. The fluorescent lights hum faintly above them. For the first time, they look at each other, not as adversaries, but as two people who've both been losing the same quiet war. Caprio lets the silence work before speaking. You're both right, he says evenly. And both wrong. Because the real battle isn't between love and duty, it's between ego and honor. Deborah wipes her cheek with the back of her hand. Ego and honor? Yes, he says softly. Ego wants to win. Honor wants to be worthy. She looks down. He doesn't talk to me anymore, she murmurs. It's like living with a ghost. I thought if I fought back, I'd wake him up. Patrick's voice cracks for the first time. You did. Just not the way you meant to. Caprio glances toward him. Mr. Hale, you wrote your wife a ticket. That's one kind of courage. But it takes a different kind to forgive what you were trying to teach. Patrick nods once, a small motion heavy with meaning. Understood, Your Honor. The judge lifts the paper, the citation that started it all. This ticket stands, he says finally. Not as punishment, Mrs. Hale, but as a reminder. Respect isn't a privilege. It's a practice. The courtroom absorbs the words like water on dry ground. Deborah draws a breath and nods. Then I'll pay it, she says quietly. But not from my wallet. From my pride. A faint murmur moves through the audience, no laughter, no pity. Just quiet recognition. The moment feels sacred in its simplicity. Patrick closes his eyes briefly, the corners of his mouth twitching, almost a smile. For the first time, there's no tension in his shoulders. Caprio straightens the papers and sets them aside. There are no winners in this room, he says. Only people learning to stand beside what they love without stepping over it. Deborah lets out a soft, shaky laugh. You make it sound so easy. It isn't, Caprio replies. That's why it matters. She turns to her husband. You know, when I saw that ticket, I wanted to tear it to pieces. He meets her eyes. And now? I think I'll frame it. The words hang there, fragile but sincere. Patrick's eyes glisten, and for a second, every wall between them seems to fall. He reaches for her hand across the table, hesitates, then she meets him halfway. Caprio gives a small nod, a quiet acknowledgement that this is the verdict that counts. Mrs. Hale, he says gently, you've paid your fine already, just not in cash. And Mr. Hale, I hope the department has room for one more example of what integrity looks like. Patrick stands. With your permission, Your Honor, I'd rather take her home. The judge's voice softens to almost a whisper. Then court is adjourned. Not the kind with a gavel, the kind that starts over. He taps the papers once, no need for a hammer. The audience doesn't applaud, but the silence feels alive, full of the unspoken truth that some debts can only be cleared by humility. As they walk out together, she leans closer and murmurs, just loud enough for him to hear, this time, you can drive. He chuckles under his breath. Only if you promise not to park in my spot. The door closes behind them. The last thing heard in the room isn't the shuffle of feet or the creak of benches, it's the faint, steady rhythm of breathing again in sync. The courtroom has long emptied, but Judge Caprio remains at his desk, the faint murmur of the city seeping through the old windows. He turns the citation over in his hands once more, the ink of Officer Hale's signature still crisp, unbent. There's something poetic about it, how the smallest act, one sheet of paper, can redraw the boundaries between two people. Footsteps echo softly across the tiled floor. Patrick Hale stands at the doorway, hat tucked under his arm. No audience, no uniformed officers watching, just two men, both tired in different ways. Your Honor, Patrick says quietly, I wanted to thank you. Not for clearing anything up. For letting her see me again. Caprio looks up, his eyes kind. And maybe, officer, for letting you see her. Patrick exhales, a smile flickering. Yeah. Maybe that too. He hesitates, as if weighing whether to say more. You know, I used to think justice was something you served. Like coffee. Hot, quick, and gone. But today, it felt like something you learned to carry. The judge's mouth lifts at one corner. The older I get, the more I believe justice isn't about who's right. It's about who's willing to listen long enough to be changed. Patrick nods once, a soldier's bow, then turns to leave. As the doors close behind him, Caprio murmurs under his breath, almost to the quiet. Fairness without compassion is just a rulebook. Outside, late sunlight spills down the courthouse steps. Deborah waits at the bottom, coat drawn tight against the breeze. In her hand, a folded check. She doesn't move when Patrick appears, just watches him approach. He stops a step below her. "You didn't have to wait." "I know," she says. "But I wanted to." She presses the check into his palm. "Pay it for me. Not because you're right, because now I understand why you had to be." For a moment, he can't speak. Then he nods, closing his hand around hers and the check together. "You sure?" She smiles faintly. First time in a long while. They start walking toward the lot, side by side, not touching but close enough that their shadows overlap in the slanting light. The city hums around them, ordinary traffic, distant sirens, the kind of peace that comes not from silence, but from finally being heard. Patrick glances at her. "You think the judge actually believed we'd learned something?" Deborah laughs, low and unforced. "If he didn't, he wouldn't have let us walk out together." They pause at the curb. A patrol car glides past, lights off, the reflection sliding over their faces like a quiet benediction. She looks at him, the corners of her eyes damp but steady. "Patrick," she says softly, "for what it's worth, I'm proud of you." He looks at her, eyes brighter than the streetlights flickering on. "That's worth everything." She chuckles. "You know, I'll never park in that spot again." "I believe you," he says, then grins. "But I'm still writing the ticket if you do." For the first time in years, they both laugh, unforced, unguarded. The kind of laughter that doesn't erase what came before, but forgives it. Inside the courthouse, Judge Caprio turns off the desk lamp. In the darkness, his reflection in the window merges with the city lights outside. He thinks of the officer, the wife, the stubborn love that nearly drowned them both. He whispers, more prayer than statement. Justice isn't balance, it's mercy measured in courage. Then he gathers his coat, leaves the file on the desk, and walks out into the Providence night. The sound fades to the rhythm of footsteps and wind through the trees. No applause. No verdict. Only the quiet assurance that somewhere out there, two people found a way back to decency, and called it justice.